What's up everybody, welcome back to Fangs and Forums. I've got a couple creepy stories that might just make you sleep with one eye open tonight. Nothing too terrifying, just enough to make your skin crawl a little bit. So grab a snack, turn the lights down low, and let's dive into some spine-tingling tales.
Something in the woods is calling us, using our voices. My fiancé and I live out in the rural south, in a tiny town with a population of just 700 people. Our home sits on about 30 acres of land, quiet, open, and remote. The area was once inhabited by the Creek Native Americans, and later torn apart during Sherman's march in the 1800s. The land is old, full of history, and sometimes it feels like it hasn't forgotten. We've both had our fair share of strange experiences over the years. But nothing compares to what's been happening this past year. Something out there has started calling to us, using each other's voices. It's always the same phrase. Just a simple, "Honey?" or "Hey, honey?" Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. But every time, it sounds exactly like one of us calling the other. It happens during the day and at night, but always when we're outside. And every time it happens, it feels wrong. Not just unsettling, but like something is waiting, lurking. Like it wants us to respond or go investigate. The air gets heavy. The woods go silent. Sometimes we get the overwhelming feeling that we're being watched from the tree line. We've started calling it the Watcher, because whatever it is, it doesn't seem to leave. It doesn't chase or attack. It just watches. Waits. We've never followed the voice. We don't answer it. Over time, we've learned to ignore it. To show the land respect, and hope that whatever's out there respects us in return. But even with that distance, the feeling never really goes away. We're still not sure what it is. A spirit? Something older? Something tied to the land? We'd love to know if anyone else has ever experienced something like this. A voice that isn't quite yours, calling from the woods.
There were actually so many comments to this post, and I'm gonna read a few for you right now because in my opinion some of the comments were interesting, if not even more interesting than the actual post. In the first one right here.
Hi. I'm actually Navajo, and while what I'm going to say comes from my background, it still applies more broadly. Based on what you've described, it could be one of two things, a mimic or a walker. A mimic is usually short in stature. They are often described as being made of shadow, with the exception of a pale face and large black eyes. For some reason, they're known to turn faucets on, and they're typically associated with indoor disturbances. But if you're hearing this voice outside, then I don't think it's a mimic. It's more likely to be a walker, and I'm really not supposed to talk about those. Given the land you're on and the history of that area, this possibility makes more sense. Here's what I'd suggest: don't leave personal items outside, like muddy boots, clothing, or tools. These can hold your energy. Burn your trash if you can, rather than leaving it out. Lock all doors and windows at night, even if you feel safe. If you see strange dogs, foxes, or coyotes on your property, don't engage. Run them off, or call animal control. And whatever you do, don't let them near your home. If you have pets, never leave them outside unsupervised. Bring them in at night, and only let them out when you're watching. Hang witch bells on all your door handles. You can find or make them yourself. The sound has a frequency said to ward off negative energy. Place iron at every entry point. Traditionally, people used horseshoes, but it can be anything made of iron. It's believed to ground and protect. I used to think all of this, the bells, the iron, were just old wives' tales. But I've changed my mind. The bells work through vibration and frequency, and iron works through grounding. It might sound strange, but in situations like this, it definitely couldn't hurt.
Yeah, I don't know about all that. It sounds a bit too creepy for me to even rest a thought on. All I know is that the next comment had something similar happen. However, somehow Italian opera is involved. I will let you get to that, but first, if you made it this far into the video, a like would be greatly appreciated, just so that I know that someone's enjoying the content. And yeah, enough yapping. Here's the second comment.
I think I was targeted by a mimic. I had no idea about the faucets. My heart is pounding just thinking about it. A few years ago, I went through something that I now believe was a mimic. The signs were there, the voice, the tone, the presence. It started by mimicking my husband's voice. Sometimes it would just call out to me, but other times, it would shout. Angrily. As if it were standing right next to my ear. But the strangest thing? I never saw anything. I only heard the voice. And I felt it, this heavy, dark, suffocating presence. Like the air itself had weight. Then one night, something happened that still sends chills down my spine. The faucet in our guest bathroom turned on, full blast. But here's the thing, that faucet had been broken for a while. It physically couldn't be turned on. It was jammed. Stuck. We had to call a plumber to shut it off. Even he couldn't explain how or why it happened. After that, we finally called in a Hindu priest. He performed a blessing on the entire house. It was a long, involved process that required several family members to participate. And thankfully, after that, things got quieter. We eventually moved. But the mimic, it didn't show up out of nowhere. It began during a very dark time in our lives. My husband and I were struggling. Emotionally, mentally, we were distant and hurting. I had stopped sleeping in our bedroom and started staying in the guest room upstairs. The same room where the faucet turned on. I was depressed. Deeply. I missed work. I stopped showering. I barely moved. I was just rotting in that bed. And during that time, the house didn't feel like home anymore. There were moments when I'd be downstairs, and the upstairs TV, near that same guest room, would randomly turn on. No matter what I had been watching last, it would always come on to the same thing. Italian opera music. Always. I don't know what that means. But it never felt like a glitch. It felt like a message. What I want to know is this: do mimics prey on people during dark times? Are they drawn to despair? We weren't near Native American land. We lived in a suburb. A normal neighborhood. But still, something found us.
So clearly, even if you're not living on tribal land, there is a chance your taps are getting turned on, and there's nothing you can do about it. And with that being said, I would like to move to the final video, which is not so much scary, but rather quite creepy. It is about a girl who is an undergrad who's working a job, and there's a really creepy security guard. I will let you hear how the story unfolds, and it's pretty weird. It involves a wooden stick.
He thought I liked him. But we'd barely spoken. Back when I was an undergrad, I got a summer job at a theme park. I worked for a marketing firm's street team, basically getting people to sign up for credit cards. It was 4 days a week, but the shifts were brutal, 12 hours a day. Because my assignments rotated and I had to be in the park before it opened, I was usually there pretty early. Every day, the same security guard was at the gate. Mid-30s, maybe 40, totally average looking. He never said much. Just checked my backpack with this long wooden stick, poking around inside like he was stirring soup. We all noticed it was only the women who got the thorough bag checks. As the summer went on, one of my girlfriends from school also got a job at the park. One day, during a break in the staff cafeteria, she pointed something out that I hadn't noticed. He was watching me. Just standing there, across the room, looking up at our table. I told her he was probably just on break too. We were sitting underneath a mounted TV, so I tried to shrug it off. But after that, things started to feel off. One day, I noticed him standing near my booth in the water park, even though his shift should have ended hours earlier. Then another time, I saw him again, This time near my post in the park's wilderness section. Not close enough to be casual. Close enough to be deliberate. Later that week, I spotted him again. In the parking lot while I was walking to my car. By this point, it was hard to keep chalking things up to coincidence. I brought it up to my boss, who thankfully was a good guy. He agreed it was weird and started walking me to my car each night after work. Then came the last week of summer, just before I was due to head back to college. I left work a little early one day. It was late afternoon, still light out, and I was alone. I got to my car, and he was there, waiting for me. He came up to me and said something along the lines of, "I know you like me." I don't remember everything he said. My memory blanks out a bit after that, but I do remember seeing his wooden stick. He was holding it low against his hip, like he'd done when checking bags. I started to back away, toward the guard shack, heart pounding. Then my cell phone rang, this big, loud brick phone from the early 2000s. The sound startled both of us. I grabbed it and answered quickly, saying loudly that it was my boyfriend on the line. That seemed to shake him. He didn't say a word. Just slammed the stick into one of my tires hard, then turned and stormed off to his own car, muttering to himself. My boyfriend, still on the phone, told me to go back to the guard shack. But I didn't want to be near any guard at that point. I waited until the man had driven off, then got in my car and drove home shaking. I think about that day a lot. What could have happened? What might have happened if my phone hadn't rung? We never really spoke, that guard and I. Never more than a hello. I don't know what gave him the idea that I liked him. Maybe it was just me being polite. Maybe it was nothing. But I learned something that day, something far too many women learn the hard way. Sometimes, being nice is all it takes for someone to decide you owe them something. And I was lucky.
You know, it's stories like this that really puts into perspective of just how tough some girls have it. Majority of girls. You know, there are some really bad apples out there when it comes to guys. And you know what? Sometimes I think it's pointless defending us. I get why they choose the bear. Because that is bad. That is creepy. But that is not a man, and he is not a representation of what a true man is. And yeah, there's no defending us anymore, boys. It's just done. It's a done deal, guys. We are unsalvageable because of guys like this. And with that being said, thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, we're practically family, right? And family subscribe to each other. Or am I incorrect? I will see you in the next one. Peace out.